7. The Rock of the Salamander. She was supposed to meet Valko in the bakery closest to the Bulgarian embassy at 7:45 a.m. the next morning. That was the plan. To get picnic supplies for the trip to Fontainebleau and all that. But when Maya woke up, after having fallen asleep on the floor of her room, where she spent the night dreaming fitful dreams about mothers walking away into the woods, she felt slow and creaky and not at all in the mood to go on some castle-hunting expedition with Cousin Louise. It was that stupid compass, mostly, that was making her feel so grumpy. Because when you looked at the situation clearly, without covering your eyes with your hands or making up fancy explanations, it did not look good. Fourquoy's own writing desk spits out a compass right into your own clumsy hands, and then you just let your baby brother and your friends talk you into following that little needle wherever it points to? Pathetic, right? But the really scary thing was she was pretty sure, deep inside, that there was nothing else she could be doing right now. Even merely thinking about not going along on this little expedition made her heart rattle with worry. She had to go. She was bound to go. And then her brain just filled in all the blank spaces with excellent reasons why she should go. James really wanted to do this. Cousin Louise had made this nice offer. How could Maya back out? Maybe it would be helpful to see where that compass wanted to take them. Brains are really good at finding reasons for things. That's pretty much the human brain's particular talent. Well, there is nothing like feeling trapped to make a person want to do some groaning and grumbling and dragging of trapped, bound, clockwork feet. The foot dragging had worked so well that it was almost 8 when she came racing into the bakery, where there was no Valko waiting after all. She caught her breath and said, "Bonjour, madame," as politely as she could, and was about to order a bunch of croissants, when suddenly the world gave a sickening lurch, and Maya could feel the tingle-tangle of strangeness, of magic, spilling into the air. It was happening again, and oh, it was not a pleasant feeling. It was like being ever so slightly seasick, watching the waves of strangeness reach that glass case. Right there in front of her own pointing finger, the pastries began to twist and change. 5 croissants, she managed to say somehow, nonetheless, and now the woman behind the counter stared at her with eyes that had fogged up completely from one second to the next. "Croissant?" the woman said vaguely. "Are those something you eat? What are those?" Maya could not look away. The croissants on the tray before her were stretching out their arms, unfolding and remaking themselves, becoming something new. It would have been funny in a video or a movie. It would have been like little lamps learning to walk, or stuffed cats playing the piano. But in real life, it was awful. "As you can see," said the vague bakery woman, "we have the vines and we have the flowers, but we have no, what do you call them? Crescents." It was like that first time, thought Maya. Like last Friday, only this time it's worse. Maya emerged from the shop with a couple of baguettes, a bag full of vines and flowers, and a pounding heart. It was a relief to see Valko coming toward her, threading his way through a group of dazed businesswomen, again, their abandoned briefcases around their feet, who were making the strange sounds of people about to break into song. "Sorry I'm late," said Maya and Valko at the very same moment, and then they tried to smile at each other, but Maya could see the tension in Valko's face and suspected he could see the same in hers. "Look out," he said. Maya was about to back right into one of those singing women. She skittered to the side instead. "Wait, don't tell me. They're not supposed to be acting that way, are they?" said Valko. "No," said Maya. At least Valko was doing a little better than the last time. At least he had some sense that something was wrong. "Can't you tell? It's happened again. Worse even. Look what's going on with that car over there." Several thin strips of metal had peeled themselves loose from the car's hood and were weaving themselves into a very complicated floral tangle. "That's not normal," said Valko. It was pretty close to being a question, though. "No, it's not. Let's get out of here," said Maya. Okay, said Valco, but he was staring in the other direction, trying to figure something out about those singing women. Do you hear them singing? What do they think they're doing? He said, the old investigative fire spiking up in his eyes, and he went zipping over to one of the nearest businesswomen before Maya could haul him away. Excuse me, madame, he said, waiting, since he was by nature polite as well as investigative, until the woman had paused in her shrill song to take a breath. I can't help but notice you're singing in Bulgarian. Have you perhaps spent time studying that language? Oh, said the woman, pulling absent-mindedly at the string of pearls round her neck. Striking hair, Maya noticed, one brilliant streak of white running through the carefully coiffed brown. Bulgarian? Is that Bulgarian? And she giggled a little, which sounded strange coming from someone in the extremely buttoned-down wardrobe of a bank executive. But it is the inspiration that matters, is it not? We are, how do you call it, samodivi, she said, but in her very French accent the word sounded like this, samodiv. Maya raised her eyebrows in Valco's direction. What did that mean? Maybe she even said that out loud. Oh, well then, said Valco. Thank you so very much. Come on, Maya. Maya, said the woman with the pearls. She rolled it around in her mouth as if it was a word she was not tasting for the first time. Maya. The woman next to her turned around to look too. But that was odd. Her hair had that surprising streak in it as well. Maya, she said, something shadowy in her voice. And indeed, over there in the thickest knot of singing, swaying ladies, the shadows were coalescing into a shape, and the shape was turning the top of its shadowy self in their direction. Oh, ugh, said Valco to Maya. Ugh, 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 gash! Which was not as polite as Valco usually was. By then they were around the corner and halfway down the next block. Blech, said Maya in an unhappy gasp when they stopped again to try to breathe. Makes me never, ever want to hear my name ever again. No kidding, said Valco, and then a different, more miserable expression came into his eyes. Oh, rats, I forgot for a moment. The thing I have to tell you. It's a bit of a problem. What? Said Maya. What could be more of a problem than crazed women with streaks of lightning in their hair hissing your name? It's my grandmother with a mole. She's threatening to come from Bulgaria and descend upon us in person, to see for herself how I'm doing, and then probably drag me away by my hair. There was a pause then, while Maya tried to remember how it had felt a week ago, when it had just been beginning to be all right, being in Paris. But oh, if Valco went away... That awful, awful thought was interrupted by an urgent murmur from Valco. Dang, that thing is still following us. Come on. Her blurry eyes could hardly see the pavement before her, much less shadows half a block away. Valco was half dragging her along the sidewalk, and her numb feet complied. Look, there's that bizarro edge in the air again, said Valco, pulling Maya right through it. Farther away than last time, I think. I'll just mark it really fast. And did you see what's happening to that bench back there? Sheesh! Not to mention we're pretty late for your cousin Louise. He paused, that interested look lighting up his eyes a bit as he studied the street behind them. It really can't get through, he said thoughtfully. See that? Maya did see, the shadow leaning against that invisible wall in the air, trying to writhe its way through. It made her feel a little sick. Like a fish tank for shadows, said Valco. But let's go, or your cousin Louise will pop us into an aquarium of her own. Pauline Vian was already ensconced in the back seat of Cousin Louise's fluorescent green Peugeot when it pulled up in front of the Davidsons' building. Cousin Louise leaped out of the driver's seat with all the showmanship of one of those people on old TV shows revealing the gorgeous dining set you can win. My goodness, said Maya's mother as she leaned against the nearest wall. She had come down to see them off, and to see for herself Cousin Louise's new and astonishing car. What an extraordinary color! Allons-y, said Cousin Louise, pleased as Punch. Packages and picnics into the trunk, children into the car, castles await. It was a bit of a squish in the back seat, and Maya ended up in the middle, so that Pauline and James could have windows to look out, which meant that Maya spent the next hour or so catching mere glimpses of tall buildings and busy intersections and edges of roadways, all while trying very hard not to think about the things going slightly wrong back there in the part of the universe nearest to the Bulgarian embassy, or about how car-sick she was beginning to feel. "Wow, the needle really jumps around when we turn corners," said James on her left. "Look." Maya shook her head. Even opening her eyes was beginning to be a chore, but closing them wasn't good either. "Whatever is that?" said Pauline from Maya's other side. "Oh, the little compass toy." "We're going to find the... What pole did you say, Valco? It was fancier than the one where the penguins live." "South-southeast," said Valco, looking back from the front seat. "Maya, are you all right?" "Fine," said Maya, spitting the word out as quickly as she could so that she could clamp her lips shut again. "That sounds like a girl in urgent need of a pastille au citron," said Cousin Louise, as she veered left into traffic. "Be so kind, Valco, as to open the little compartment just in front of you. You'll see a small tin. Lemon drops. Voila." "Okay, Maya, try this," said Valco, pressing a small round candy into Maya's hand. It did help a little, the sour sweetness of the lemon. She could open her eyes after a minute or two. And as Cousin Louise's car whipped past the peripheries of Paris, the road became a huge flowing highway, and that helped too. "Ooh, look at the needle now," said James, his eyes glued to the compass. He had clearly inherited his inner ear from some more robust side of the family. "It's pointing straight ahead. Are we going to get there soon? I've never seen a south-southeast pole." "Let's be more precise. Nobody has ever seen a south-southeast pole," said Pauline Vian. It was scary how much she could sound like an adult sometimes. "Even the poles that do exist, nobody has ever seen them. They are a concept, not a thing like a stick for people to see." "Scientists have seen poles," said James stubbornly. "They go there on big sleds. Right, Maya?" "Ah, Pauline, what a lovely idea I've just had," said Cousin Louise. "You are excellent in histoire, are you not? Why don't you tell us a little history of the Château de Fontainebleau where we drive?" Little stifled groans from various passengers in the car, and then Maya let herself fall into polite oblivion for a while, punctuated by lemon drops, while Pauline recited what must have been whole chapters from some history textbook called Fontainebleau, the Renaissance Château. King François I. Artists from Italy. Catherine de' Medici. François II. Charles IX. Henry IV. 16th century. 17th century. 18th. Boy, these poor French kids sure had a lot of names and dates to memorize, thought Maya, her eyes shut again, the latest lemon drop melting tangily on the tip of her tongue. And then there they were, piling creakily out of Cousin Louise's jewel-green machine, breathing the cold, cold air of a brand-new November, and being shepherded across acres of cobblestones to the entrance and the ticket office. "Wow, look at this. It's a great big, huge, sideways castle," said James, looking at the staircases, the cobblestones, the long, long lines of windows everywhere. "I thought it would be going up in the air like the Disneyland one." "But no," said Pauline, "since the Disneyland of Kassel is not, as far as I know, originally from the Renaissance." Maya was still having trouble telling whether Pauline had no sense of humor at all, or some very dry, very French sense of humor that you had to be an excellent student and a native speaker of the language to appreciate properly. She thought probably the latter, but she was paying close attention until she knew for sure. "Keep up, please, children," said Cousin Louise, who apparently believed in brisk visits. "I will be most displeased if anyone turns up lost. It is a vast place, Fontainebleau." "I'm hungry," said James in an informative tone of voice as they trotted up the entrance stairs. He said it again in the long gallery of François I, but mostly he was counting carved and painted salamanders. Salamanders! They were everywhere. not to mention many, many golden F's. The emblem of Le Roi de François, said Cousin Louise, whose sharp eyes did not miss a single flinch. No need to look so concerned, Maya. An appropriate symbol for the Renaissance. In fact, the salamander is unscorched by the flames, birth and rebirth. Maya's hand had gone right to the cabinet glass at her neck. There was an itty-bitty salamander in there, too, a tiny magical echo of the bronze salamander guarding the salamander house's door. Salamanders lived in more than one world at once. That was why they were the symbol of her mother's magical and amphibious family, the Leverots. So, birth and rebirth. That was what Renaissance meant, rebirth. She shivered a little. Maybe our compass used to belong to the king, said James. It has a salamander on it, too. See, there it is, sitting on a rock. And an F. You have to look close to see it, though. Different F, said Maya, biting her lip. Why had they come here? That's what she was thinking. Why did the world seem to be conspiring to remind her of her troubles all the time? And now the south-southeast pole is that way, said James, looking up from the compass and pointing out to the great windows. Valco did that little shoulder-turning dance people do when they're trying to figure out which direction lies where. I don't think so, he said. That's got to be west, not south. Let me see that thing. He took the little compass from James and for a while kept looking at it, and then up out those windows again, perplexed. That's definitely not south-southeast anymore, he said. Strange. Keep moving, children. Did you see that statue of Diana? Remarkable. Cousin Louise, said James, jogging a little to catch up with her, we're going to find the pole after the castle, right? We're going to have our picnic in the local forêt, said Cousin Louise, pausing for a millisecond to admire another detailed painting of a mythological scene. It's a cold day, but not damp. The woods will be refreshing. And you said you were hungry, I believe. We'll eat at the pole, said James. If your pole is in a pleasant place for a picnic, then certainly, said Cousin Louise. Why not? They emerged from the castle after having seen only 20 or so of its 1,500 rooms, but they staggered out into the world, rather stunned by the sheer castleness of the whole place. The height of the ceilings, the gilt decorations on the walls, the paintings and inlaid floors and tapestries and statues of goddesses and salamanders. It was all too much, somehow. It was a relief to be back out in the cold air and bickering pleasantly among themselves about the best place to eat their bread and cheese, and buttery, flaky vines and flowers. Finally, James put his foot down. Cousin Louise had promised they could have their picnic at the pole, and he wasn't budging until they all agreed. Very well, said Cousin Louise, but you have to tell us how to get to this pole of yours, young man. We can just get in the car and follow the needle, said James. But not as far as Tunisia, please, said Pauline Vian. No, agreed Cousin Louise. We follow your needle only in these woods here, and only for a little while. And when I say it is time for us to stop for our picnic, pole or no pole, then we cheerfully exit the car and eat our baguettes, yes? James accepted these terms quite graciously for someone who was only 5, but Maya could see he wasn't paying much attention. He was sure the compass would lead them right where they wanted to go. Probably, thought Maya, he did think the pole would turn out to be a long, thin stick stuck right into the ground. The search for the mysterious pole turned out to be quite a lot of fun, for everyone with tougher stomachs than Maya's anyway. Valco held the compass up in front of him, and as he pointed out the direction the needle was showing, Cousin Louise made daring swoops and turns. The riders in the back seat, the ones who weren't Maya, grinned and shrieked and held on tight, and Maya chomped down on lemon drop after lemon drop and was overwhelmed by a combination of excitement and worry. Was it wise to be following the needle of old Fourcroy's own compass? Maya couldn't really see any way of answering that question that sounded anything like yes. It was not wise. But on the other hand, she was curious, very curious, about as curious as a person can be without actually flushing red from eagerness, about what that compass needle had in mind. And if they were going to thwart that shadowy forequoy in his resurrection plans, they needed to know as much as possible about those plans, didn't they? Didn't they? Even if finding these things out was part of his plan? And why had the strangeness returned this morning anyway? Remembering that brought the carsick feeling back. It was all dominoes falling, perhaps. She had to find the writing desk, and now she had to follow the compass. But the trick was finding what had her mother called it? Wiggle room. She had left the letter behind in the writing desk, despite its important splotch of blood, right? So that was what she would obviously have to keep doing. It meant being very clever and very careful. It was trying to fool the whole universe somehow, if the universe was really just a gazillion little rows of dominoes falling, one after the other, after the other, after the next. Her mind got as far as this thought and froze a little. She had another lemon drop. Pauline Vian was tugging on her sleeve. "Where did this compass toy come from?" she was asking. "An ebony bird gave it to me." Maya squidged the lemon drop over to the side of her mouth. "It's complicated," she said. The car veered to the right. "Wait," said Valco. "I think. Keep going a little. Yes." He turned around to the backseat passengers and waved the compass in the air. "Okay, we must be almost there." "How do you know?" said Maya, while James made the whole back seat bounce up and down to mark his impatience. "The needle's not stuck pointing in any one direction now. It moves a little every time we move. Let's get out. I'll show you." Cousin Louise parked the car on the edge of the road and peered out through the glass. They were deep in the Fontainebleau woods, bare November trees as far as the eye could see, and a low, piney ridge dribbled with boulders. "There should be good picnic places over that way, among the rocks," said Cousin Louise. "Bon, out you all get. Bring the food." "So it is no pole at all, but a particular place," said Pauline Vian, as she scrambled out of the back seat and pulled her sweater closer around her. "From the perspective of magnetism, that makes no sense whatsoever. How can it possibly be working, this little mechanism? I don't understand it. Not at all." "Neither do I," said Valka with a grin. "This way." What Maya found herself understanding was that HDF's compass was like somebody running a large-scale game of hot and cold. The needle pointed, and they followed, hot. When they swerved off course, the needle veered back in the other direction, cold. It took them right up the piney hillside toward all those quite incredible clumps of boulder, toward one particular pile of boulders, in fact. "You've been looking for a rock?" said Pauline. She put her hand on it testingly. "But this is just sandstone. It couldn't be the least bit magnetic." They stood in a semicircle looking up at one of the strangest of the boulders, the long end of which stuck right out in the air like the head of a huge and ancient turtle. "It's magic," said James, who seemed quite satisfied. "It's a magic pole, and maybe before it was a rock, it used to be a dinosaur." Valco laughed, but James was already out of sight again, circumnavigating the huge stone dinosaur that the south-southeast pole had so surprisingly turned out to be. Maya was thinking, "I've seen this rock before. Where have I seen this rock?" And Cousin Louise started looking through the bag of picnic provisions at her side. "James," she said with the tone of someone about to start assigning small, helpful tasks. "I'm way up here," said James from somewhere up above them. Well, way up there was pretty much right. James was shinnying up the lizard head of the thing, too many feet above the ground for Maya's comfort. Cousin Louise had already leaped to her feet again. "James," said Cousin Louise, "descend from there, immediately." "My dinosaur has a name," said James as he scooted reluctantly back down. "Someone painted it right on his side." "You mean graffiti?" said Maya. Sometimes it was a good thing that James couldn't read very well. Valco caught her eye, grinned, and ducked behind the boulder to see what awful thing might be scrawled there. He was back in a second, with surprise scrawled all over his face. "You look," he said to Maya. So Maya and Pauline both followed him around the rock's corner, where in fairly neat lines of white paint someone had written, Rocher de la Salamandre. Ah, said Pauline, the rock climbers. They like to name their rocks. So it's almost a dinosaur, called Valco to James, but not quite. It says, this is the rock of the salamander. Oh, said James. He was trying to decide whether or not he was disappointed. Dinosaurs are pretty cool, being so large and so extinct. But those sneaky salamanders kept turning up everywhere, and sneakiness is pretty cool, too. Well, time for lunch, said Cousin Louise briskly. Maya, you are looking rather perplexed. I'll be okay in a minute, said Maya. Could I see that compass a moment? I'll catch up. Cousin Louise gave her a look, but moved everyone a little distance away along the hillside, to a place where the rocks looked better for sitting. Maya hardly noticed them leaving. She was looking at the compass again, at the funny salamander molded into its cover, standing on its tiny little metal rock. To the origin point. That's what it said on the back. Here, she said to herself. Really? Here? Because she had finally remembered where she had seen the rock of the salamander before. It had only been pen and ink, of course, only the sketchiest of sketches. But a pen and ink little boy had been peeking into a hollow of it, with his pen and ink mother watching, in her long, old-fashioned skirts, at his side. She walked around the boulder, looking. There was maybe more earth around the base of it, more debris gathered over time or something. But she finally found what might once have been the top of a hollow. With a little loose rock, she started working away at the earth there. The dirt was packed pretty tight, but to her relief, right underneath that thin-packed layer, the ground gave way, and her hand was reaching into a small cave tucked away under the rock itself. "What are you doing? What's in that gap?" said Valco. She hadn't heard Valco come up behind her. Maya was almost flat on the ground now, stretching her hand into the cool darkness of that hidden hollow place. It was like the entire universe had just turned itself into some immensely complex lens, and all the world's attention was focused exactly here. She was no longer just Maya, but a part of that intensely focused attention. "It was in the book," she said, while her fingers kept exploring the earth and rock of that hidden place, following the curves of the stone, the edge, the straight edge, cold and metallic, of a little box. "It's really here," she said, surprise shivering right back up her arm. "It's here." "What's here?" said Valco. "What book?" She shifted around, scrabbled a little, and finally found a piece of something to grab onto. "This," she said, and out into the cold autumn air came her dusty, triumphant hand, and the 100-year-old box of the Fourquois.